Welcome to State of Wellbeing, a podcast from South Dakota State University. The State of Wellbeing is a holistic well-being podcast with the goal of supporting the campus community as we strive to be a growing, high-performing, and healthy university.
Welcome to another episode of State of Wellbeing podcast. My name is Teresa Seefeldt, Vice Provost for Undergraduate Education here at SDSU. And I'm joined today by a member of our Instructional Design Services team, Malynda.
Yeah.
Do you want to tell us a little bit about yourself to start the podcast off?
Sure. So my name is Malynda Mabbitt. I am a learning designer with Instructional Design Services here at SDSU. And we basically deal in all things online.
Yeah, perfect. So the conversation that we're going to have today is really about building community in online courses. And that's one of the focus areas for the mental well-being team, which brings you this podcast every week. We're really thinking about community and belonging as focus areas this year and how community and belonging impacts student success. And I know as an instructor who has taught both face-to-face and online, community buildings can be kind of hard in online courses, right?
Yeah.
That it's, I think, easy for students who are learning at a distance to feel detached from their instructors, from their peers, from the university itself.
Yeah.
So I think this is an important conversation for us to have as we think about online instruction and student success and how do we build a community and a sense of belonging and connection in our online courses. So to start with, I wonder if you could talk a little bit about what community means to you, and specifically, how do you at Instructional Design Services think about community in online courses?
Sure, absolutely. So I do have a quote. I love my quotes. So this is from John Donne. He was a poet back in England during the 1600s. And he wrote a poem called No Man is an Island. And it is, no man is an island entire of itself. Every man is a piece of the continent, a part of the main. And so for me, that's essentially community. We as humans are designed to be part of a community. We're not designed to be separated from the main, from the continent, as John Donne would say. And so that's why community is so important, because you can feel that way at times when you are all alone at your computer in the middle of the night, and maybe you've just had a rough day and the kids have been crying all day and you just want a break and you want to be able to commune. And you can't do that unless you have a course that's designed in a way that will help you feel connected to SDSU as a whole, feel connected to not just the class you're in, but maybe the department that's offering the course, and then, of course, to the greater institution beyond, which is SDSU and Jackrabbit Nation. So,
I love that. So how does that connection really contribute to a student's success overall, whether that's academic success, their professional success? Can you talk a little bit about that?
I think it is probably one of the most important components of student success online. That's why I think it's still important in this day and age to have that sense of community and to have that course development that's going to inspire them to keep coming back. Because it's very easy for a student to completely disappear from a course that doesn't feel engaging and inviting. And how do you do that? You build that community. You make that student want to keep coming back. And it's a major component of their success. If they don't come back, they don't finish. They don't finish with that degree.
Yeah, and as we're having a lot of conversations on at the university right now about student success, we're updating our student success model, but we're also trying to grow online education and online opportunities for our students. And so I think you're absolutely right that we have to make sure that we've got that community, that connection, that belonging in those courses to make sure that we really are achieving those objectives for our students and helping them to be successful and graduate and be successful in their future careers. So that's why I think this is such an important conversation. So as I kind of talked a little bit about in my introduction that I've done this. I've been an online instructor, and it is challenging to think about how you design your course, how you set up your course to facilitate that community and connection. So let's say I'm an instructor and I'm building this course for the first time, and I don't know where to start in thinking about how to design a course that is going to facilitate community and connection as well as deliver this important content that I'm trying to get my students to learn. What tips do you tell faculty as they're thinking about how to build community in their online courses?
Well, the first thing I would say, a little plug for our department, consider meeting with a learning designer over at Instructional Design Services, because that is what we thrive on, is helping faculty develop the top quality courses that we know can be created here at SDSU. So that'd be the first thing, of course. I got to do that little plug. The second thing would be, don't be afraid to ask. Start asking around who has taught online courses, who's been successful at teaching these online courses, and maybe pick their brain a little bit and say, hey, what did you do? Because it's easy for us as instructional designers to tell you what is perfect and great and a best practice. But if you have somebody in the same field that has been teaching online successfully, it does not hurt to go pick their brain and maybe find a mentor to help you along the way. But some of the things you can consider, first of all, is the class size. I know sometimes those classes do get filled up very quickly. Sometimes they're combined. And before you know it, you have 150 students in a classroom online. So one of the biggest things is to look at it as kind of like that elephant scenario. How do you eat an elephant? One bite at a time. How do you do it? You break it into components. So even if you may not be able to talk with each individual student in that 150 student classroom, what you can do is break them down into groups. Use the group component that you can get in D2L and work with those students in groups, in smaller sections. Because even if you're not addressing, like, Teresa, great work, now I got to go address the other 149 students. What you're doing is you're taking that course down, because it's overwhelming for students too to see, wow, I have 149 peers in this class. So if you break it down into a group, say of 10, and then you're able to address that group, there's still that sense of connection, that sense of belonging that you wouldn't get if you're trying to respond to each individual. So that would be the first component I would consider. Also, anytime you can do audio visual, kind of like what we're doing here, where we're talking this through, if you can provide a student with your voice, with your face as the faculty member, and plan it in such a way that they can see you at least on a weekly basis. Maybe do recordings early and say, this week we're going to be doing X. That helps you become the focus of that class. They're here because of your knowledge. So that's the first step. And then encourage your students to do the same, because there are many things out there. We all have webcams now. We all have microphones now. And so we all have our phones, as I sit here and shake mine here in the studio. So you have this component that people can use. They can use this audio-visual element to help engage. So they may not speak as we are right now together, but if they record a little video clip, and then the next day somebody responds to that video clip with their own, it starts to build almost like a Snapchat for higher ed, in doing that.
I love that. So that's really a way for faculty to think about how they're designing their content as well, their assignments and things. Mm-hmm. I know when in the last online course that I taught, I did have Zoom meetings with each of my students at the beginning of the semester, and it was probably only 10 minutes with each student, but it did give me a sense of why they were taking the course, where they were coming from in their background, what they wanted to do after they graduated, because I think that is important as well, to think about what those students' ultimate goals are. Are there other tips that you could give a faculty member to get started in the course? Like, how do they set the tone for that community in, say, week one of the semester?
Absolutely. So one of the first things that I always tell a faculty member is, when you disappear, your students disappear. So be prepared. Either plan ahead, like I said, before, plan ahead and do those video recordings. It's a lot of work on the front end, but then at least, you may have recorded it in August, but they're seeing it in October. You've planned that out. The other thing you can do is make sure that you are encouraging your students. If you do have discussions, which I always warn about discussion fatigue. So when online first became a thing, everybody thought, oh, I've got to have these discussions every week because this replaces class time. Don't do it. It's called discussion fatigue, and it's real. I've experienced it. I had 2 discussions a week for 15 weeks, and I had 150 students. Guess what I was doing by week 4? I was ripping my hair out, and my students were falling like flies. They just didn't want to be there. So plan accordingly. What kinds of topics need to be discussed in your class? What things do you want them to really dig into, and make those the 3 to 4 discussions that you have in that semester? You're not replacing the class time with those discussions if you have them every week. You're basically exhausting your students and yourself. So use the discussions, but use them in a way that's more meaningful. And then encourage, we have what we call video note. within the D2L system. And it's literally just a recording of you. Just as we're sitting here, you use your webcam and you can record your thoughts there and encourage or even sometimes require your students to do the same. They can do that. When it comes to planning out how you're going to assess your students and how you're going to provide feedback, again, that video note is a great way to do that. If you're having a bad hair day, you may just be able to record an audio note. It's the same concept, same steps, and those really help the student feel like they're connected to you. But the biggest thing I tell faculty is make sure you are prepared to be present in some way every week. Don't disappear on your students, they'll disappear on you. So keeping that planned out.
I love that maintaining that connection is so important between the faculty and the students. And I also liked your comments about the use of the discussion boards and what you can do kind of in that first week. It keeps the focus on student learning and the student learning objectives and really what those most critical factors are that you want the students really to learn, and focusing those assessments and those activities on that helps maintain connection while also keeping the focus on your student learning objectives, which is so critical in any course.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Do you have any other thoughts about how the course design or structure can contribute to community in addition to the delivery of the course content?
Be organized. Be very, very organized and very intentional. So, you'll hear us talk about in Instructional Design Services, universal design for learning and backwards design. And it used to be that type of focus would be, you're teaching to the test. And that's not the case. Again, you mentioned those learning objectives. Look at those learning objectives and then decide, okay, how am I going to present this information? They have to have content. They have to have resources and materials to review, but make sure it's organized in a way that doesn't scare your students. The other thing I say, in your homepage, when your students first log into D2L and they click on that little thumbnail that is your course, and they see an undeveloped course homepage, they're not going to do it. If you can't put forward the effort and at least make that homepage welcoming for your students, tell them where they need to go to get started, they're not going to do the work. If you're not going to do the work, they're not going to. Be the good example. When it comes to them clicking in the content section and getting in there, organize your course in a way that makes sense. Put yourself in your students' shoes and remember, okay, which faculty members did I absolutely love and adore when I went to school? And which ones was I like, I really don't want to take that faculty member's course again. Not that we have any of those on campus. But you want to make sure that you are the type of instructor that's thinking about your students, that's approachable, and that designs a course in a way that's going to make a student feel like, I can do this. I can do this, and it's going to be great. The other thing, too, is consider how you're assessing them. If you are requiring them to take a midterm and an exam and that's it, you're going to have some panicked students, and it's going to feel like they're unable to do it. So consider, again, like we talked about with the elephant analogy, break that course down into components that the students can digest and be able to use. Let them show you in their own way how they're learning. Don't just make it about an exam. Have them reflect. Have them in that group setting where they can work together on a group project. Make it intentional in a way that the student feels like they can accomplish it because they can. And those are some of the biggest things. If you have an approachable faculty member who's thinking about their students and remembering what it used to be like as a student, you will have a successful course.
Yeah, I really appreciate your comments on the organization of the course. One of the concerns that we often hear from students is that D2L can be challenging to navigate. That's our learning management system when faculty set their courses up in very different ways, which obviously it's going to vary based on the faculty member and their content and how they want to set that up. But if there's consistency, at least in the fact that it's organized and it's presented in a manner that is easy for the students to follow, even if the content page is set up a little differently, the student can still navigate it and they can figure out in that first week how to navigate that course. So I really appreciate your comments on the organization and how the course is set up. I think that's spot on. Now, there's a lot of other technology tools and things that are integrated into the learning management system and things that faculty can use. Are there specific tools or course design elements that you really have found to help build community in online courses?
Yes. So I mentioned Video Note before. And what that is it's literally something that's inserted right into D2L. You don't have to go out and record a Zoom session and then edit it and bring it in. It's just a very quick way to provide audio and visual feedback or just audio feedback. Like I mentioned before, if you have a bad hair day, you don't want your students to see that you've been in this wonderful wind we're having. You can turn off the camera and you can just record your voice. So that's probably the one that in our offices we really, really push for. The other thing is to think about lectures. We're not in a lecture hall anymore. We're in D2L. You are going to lose your students, as we sometimes do in the lecture hall as well, within the first 15 minutes. So what you want to do is look at that lecture you may want to put online and consider what we do chunking. It's called chunking. 10 to 15 minute segments with a little bit of a break in between. Does that require a little bit more editing on your part with that? Yes, but we do have things like Camtasia. We have Panopto. Zoom you can record in. So there's many ways that you can do it. And then if you need that extra assistance on, okay, I have this 90-minute lecture. Now how am I going to break it up into 9, 10-minute sections? And that's where we can come in at Instructional Design Services. But thinking about it in a way of, I need to chunk this up so that my students are able to, again, digest it a little easier. So consider using audio-visual at any point that you can. Make sure, again, you're using rubrics is another great tool that's built into D2L, because then you're explaining to your students or the group that you are expecting X because of this rubric. Another thing is, again, yes, we do have those quizzes and things like that, but consider using that discussion tool with that video note component. When it comes to, you mentioned before, D2L being confusing for students, consider closing your office door, turning on Zoom, sharing your screen, and showing them how to navigate your course. Because yes, D2L and Brightspace have many tutorial videos, but do they have one with the SDSU branding? Do they have one that looks like how you've laid out your course? So again, it's that front end work, but I've found when I've taught, if I have it all planned out and scheduled, even if, say, I'm sick with the flu for the second week of class, I still have it planned out to where there's a video that is being posted, that is me, and it's a way for them to still feel connected to me, even if I have to step aside and handle my own health, as we talk about, this is what this podcast is all about. Mm-hmm. So the other thing I would say to faculty, too, is be aware of self-care. I think oftentimes we have faculty that really want to do well and they really, really, really want to succeed, and then they just get tired. By week 4 or 5, they're like, I'm tired. I can't do this anymore. And so having that strategic planning on the front end is a big component of that. Making sure that you are taking care of yourself, because then you can take care of your students. It's like that analogy on the airplane. What do they tell you? When those oxygen masks drop, you put yours on first, and then you can help the next person. Take that time and do that self-care, and do that by planning ahead and making sure that you're prepared and ready to go.
Yeah, I love that, and very in line with the theme of our podcast and what we're trying to get across here. So that's fantastic. Now, we've been talking a lot about what faculty can do in their course design to help build community. I want to talk a little bit about what the students can do.
Absolutely.
So if there's a student listening to this podcast, what advice would you give them to make sure that they're engaging fully in that course and helping to build that community in that class?
Right. So make sure that if there's any concerns that you have, talk with your faculty member. They are not here to harm you in any way. They are here to encourage and guide you. And so if you do feel like you are, as John Donne would say, that man that's alone on his island, contact the faculty member and say, hey, I just wanted to touch base with you. There's office hours for a reason, and every faculty member, even if they're online, should have that office hour time. Like you mentioned, through Zoom, you would talk with your students. So engage the faculty member if you need to, but then also plan ahead and think of your own self-care as well. I am the queen of procrastination. I can tell you it doesn't work very well. So think ahead, plan ahead, look at your syllabus. Please look at your syllabus.
I would echo that.
Yes, right. I mean, I remember going to college and it was like, I still have some of my syllabi from my undergrad, which was, I'll say, just a couple decades ago. But, look at that syllabus, because that's going to have a lot of information in there. And believe it or not, your faculty members do pore over that document, because that's their blueprint for their class, right? So if you can go in there and say, okay, it looks like this is being broken down by weeks, and it looks like I need to do this and this and this. That time management skill is very, very important. And then unplug when you can. We have so many screens and devices in front of us, and here I sit and saying, be in your D2L course and be active in your course, and we want to encourage that. But if you start feeling burned out, your work is going to be of less quality. So utilize the areas here at SDSU. Even if you're an online student, you have resources to mental health. If you find that you're having issues with a certain topic, again, reach out to your faculty member, but then also consider the Wintrode Center for Student Success because they are fabulous. They're a wonderful group. I try to point faculty to them all the time when it comes to students that might be struggling. And again, if you are in a group, which we all hate group work, I know I have a collective groan whenever any of my students see group work, but the reality is the group work helps. It helps you to understand how to work with maybe even with a difficult group member. Try not to be that difficult group member, but then also how to communicate effectively, how to get projects done. So being active and involved and encouraging fellow students to do the same is going to be a huge component of that. So, but be communicating and be open to your group members, be aware of the campus that is providing all of this, all these resources for you. And then also, again, just do your best to try to manage your time in a way to where you're not burned out, because this time of year we do see that with our students. So please take some self-care. If you know you've got an exam you need to study for, but you really want to go out with your friends on Friday night, maybe try to call it an earlier night. Maybe have a Diet Coke instead of whatever else you could have. And just make sure you're taking care of yourself and managing your time wisely.
Yeah. And to kind of build off your comments too, I would refer our listeners to some of our past episodes of State of Wellbeing podcast, because we had an episode where we talked with the Office of Continuing and Distance Education about some of those resources that are available to online students, that there is tutoring available, there is mental health support and counseling available, there is library support available to all of our students, including our online students. So take a listen to that episode and get some of those tips from that. There's also a lot of resources available on online, the public website, as well as My State Online for our online listeners who would be interested in accessing some of those resources.
Absolutely. And I will say, as somebody who has my own mental health struggles, one of the wisest words I heard from a counselor once was, things can get bad. Things will get bad in life. But do not do a permanent solution to a temporary problem. Reach out and get help. If you are currently feeling stressed, if you need any kind of advice, obviously I'm not a counselor, but there are people out there that can help you. And, being overwhelmed is real. I think our students and our faculty and our staff, we all have things going on in our life that people may not see. But reaching out to those, revisiting those podcasts you just mentioned with the continuing and distance education folks, reaching out to Wintrode, even your faculty members. If you're struggling, talk to the faculty members. They're not, I think at one point in time, the faculty members were seen as like the gods of the classroom, and thou shalt not speak to them unless it's about biology or whatever else it is. But they're here to help you, and they want to inspire you, and they want to direct you. So utilize them, and if you need help, reach out, because there is always a solution, and it's always a good one, and you'd be surprised.
Great. Are there any other thoughts that you would like to share with our listeners about community building?
Just remember, I would encourage your students, even if they never step foot on campus, unless they come to the graduation, which I strongly encourage everybody to participate in that commencement ceremonies. Make them feel like a jackrabbit. Even if it's something that's not even related to your course, and you find this information, post it on your class. Email your students and say, hey, did you guys know that right now the bookstore is offering 25% off of apparel? If you use this code, why don't you get yourself a jackrabbit sweater or something? Encourage them, because they are jackrabbits. We want them to feel like they are part of the blue and yellow here. And I may not be an alumni of this institution, but working here, I am very proud to be part of SDSU. And I know every student that is in your class would want to feel the same way. So encourage them. If there are things that you might think they'd be interested in that are here on campus, still encourage that. They might live in Aberdeen, but you never know. They might drive down for the weekend to see a theater production, or they might come down to a game. So encourage them. And then when they do come to campus, be the face in the crowd that's there to help greet them too. Say, hey, you know, there's a football game coming up. Why don't you guys meet at my office in my office, Pugsley 101, and just come meet and we'll walk over to the stadium together. You know, encourage them to come if they can, but then also be aware that if they can't, still, you know, give them that information and just share how awesome it is to be a jackrabbit.
And it is awesome to be a jackrabbit.
It
Thank
is.
you, Malynda, for
Yes.
appearing on the podcast today and for sharing some of your thoughts on community building and in online courses. And thank you all for listening to this episode of State of Wellbeing Podcast.
Go Jacks.
Thank you for listening to this episode of State of Wellbeing, a podcast from South Dakota State University. This podcast is brought to you by the Mental Wellbeing Team and SD State Health.